Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Today we're taking a look at Foreclosed from Mercury Games. This is a set collection card game. Thematically speaking, you are creditors who are picking over the remains of an estate that just got foreclosed by, which was previously owned by someone who is absolutely not supposed to be a characterization of the Monopoly guy. How dare you even think that? So you are picking over the remains of his estate, trying to get the most valuable goods that you possibly can, or get, because this is a set collection game, getting the most of certain types in order to get an escalating amount of points. You also want to get money too, because money is going to help you facilitate possibly trying to buy goods from your opponents. You're all buying for the same stuff, so you can make them an offer that they literally cannot refuse on the goods that they have in front of them, instead of keeping the ones that you claim as the auctioning process goes on. Let's go ahead and take a brief look at how the game is played, and then we're going to come back and I'll let you know what I think. Alright, this is a typical setup for one player in Foreclosed. It goes up to 4 players. The goal of the game is to have the most victory points by the end of the game. In order to end the game, you need to go through the entire set of property cards. So each player is going to get 2 cards from the property deck. One card is going to be left face down in front of them. The other card is going to be flipped face up. So the other, this is a set collection game, so the more cards you have of certain types, you're going to get more points at the end of the game, according to this chart over here, which you should always be taking a look at during the course of the game. But the point of that is that the other players are going to have imperfect information as to what you might be aiming for, because they have no idea what this card is. You're going to have $4, and someone is going to randomly get the gavel, signifying that they are the start player, but this is going to pass every round. You have the rest of the money, and you also have these action cards. This board is simply to hold the cards, I guess, and to look pretty, although really not that much. Now, how the game is going to work is that whoever is the first, you're going to start a new round, and each player is going to get a property card from the top of the deck put in front of them. Now, this card has to be kept separate from the other cards that you have, because you don't technically own it yet. Each player will have a card in front of them, and then starting with the player who has the gavel for the round, you have a choice as to what you do. You can pass, which just means that you're out. You don't typically want to do that. You can choose just to collect, when collecting means you're just going to take $1 from the bank, or you can take an action card from the top of the deck, and I'll get to what those do in a little bit. Or you can make an offer. You can do an exchange. What that means is that you may say, okay, I don't necessarily want the card that just got put in front of me all that badly, so instead I think I'm going to make an offer on your card, player across from me. And what you have to do in order to do that is essentially say, okay, I'm going to give you this card and $1. You have to do at least $1 on that, or you will just do $1 to start off with. And the other player can either take your offer, in which case they're going to give you their card. So let's say that this was the card the other player had, so they'll give you yours. They're going to take your card that you have together with that $1. That's one option, and if you do that, play is going to pass to the next player. Now, one thing is, you don't necessarily, you're always going to be going in clockwise order making offers, but you don't necessarily have to offer it to the next person in line. You can skip other people and make offers to different people, but you can't go back in time. So if you make an offer to, say, the third player away from you, and they choose not to accept your offer, they protect their card, which I'll get to in a second, you can't go back at that point. So let's say that the player that you tried to make an exchange with doesn't want to do it. They can actually offer to protect their card. So let's say this is in front of the other player. They can say, no, screw that, I'm going to protect my card. And what they do is they take some money from their stock and put it on the card. They have to pay at least 1, but they can put as much money as they want. They're essentially locking down that card to prevent you from getting it from them. At that point, your only recourse is to bid more than what that player had on the card. And it's not back and forth. This is the one chance that you have to do it. So let's say that that player did decide to put 3 money on the card. You would have to put $1 more than that, so you would have to go up to putting 4 coins on the card. Then and only then would you be able to make the swap. You would take all the coins that were protecting the card, go back to the bank, and they're out of the game. Or actually, no, I'm sorry, they go back to the player who tried to protect it, and the other player is going to take your card together with all the money you had to bid in order to make that deal happen. Now, if someone decides to protect their card and they don't end up losing it, at that point, they are actually effectively out of the round. They can't make any exchange offers. All they can do is take $1 from the bank with the collect action, and that's it. This is how play is going to continue, essentially. You're just going to keep going around, either making offers or collecting or passing if that's what you're forced to do. At the end of the round, players are going to take their cards, lock them into their collection, and then play is going to continue. The gavel's going to pass, and it will go on. Now we'll go into the nitty-gritty of what's actually on these cards. This is a set collection game. You're trying to get cards of the same types of colors in order to get the most points. The more cards you have of a certain color, you're going to get an escalating amount of points at the end of the game, and some cards will actually give you bonus points. So here's one of the yellow cards, and there's some cards that have a +1 or +2 symbol. That means that this particular card is going to be worth that many more extra points at the end of the game. Here's an example of a normal card, one of the purple ones. Now this card has the heart symbol, which means that if you claim this card into your collection, at that point you get to take an action card. Which I'll get to in a second. These cards that have a little coin symbol on them means you get to immediately take an extra coin from the bank. These are money cards. These will never, unless you have a special card, these will not be worth points in and of themselves. They'll also have symbols like that might give you extra action cards and money. But what happens with the money cards is you'll take it, you'll put it in front of you, and for every time you take a money card, you get coins from the bank equal to the amount of money cards that you currently have in your collection. So the first one's going to give you 1, 2 of them is going to give you 2, and so on. So the more money cards you get, the more money you're going to get from the bank. There's an orange card, and here's one of the double cards. How these work is that when you claim this card, assuming that you actually have those 2 colors already in your collection, you can choose which color it gets associated with depending on how much better it's going to do for you for points. If you've only got one of these 2 colors, like you've only got yellow cards already in your collection, then you're going to have to make this into a yellow card. If you don't have either, it's kind of in limbo until you take one of those other types of colors as cards in front of you. Now let's take a look at those action cards. These have some of these are kind of like achievement cards. So for instance, this one says that if you can get a set of all 5 colors at the end of the game, that's going to be worth an extra 2 points for you. That's a little ribbon symbol here. This one actually gives you an escalating amount of points depending on how many cards you have with hearts on them, indicating the action symbol at the end of the game. The more you have, the more points that you're going to get. If you have only 1, you are going to get negative points. This one gives you more points depending on how many yellow cards you're going to have, and of course there's one of those for all the different types of colors. This one, for every 2 coins that you have, you're going to get a point. Otherwise, money is going to be worth nothing at the end of the game. And here's an example of a card that actually punishes you. It gives you bonus points if you have a certain allotment of cards, but punishes you by giving you less points if you have, in this example, blue or yellow cards. But of course, there will be cards like this for all the different combinations of colors. And that's really a quick run through of Foreclosed. You're just trying to get the best sets of cards possible to get the best amount of points possible, meeting the objectives on some of the action cards that you may get, and generally just trying to smart your opponent in a way by outbidding them and trying to take their property whenever it's convenient for you. Let's get to my final thoughts. Overall, I would say that Foreclosed is a solid set collection card game. It has some clunky aspects to it, but I think that overall it's pretty decent, and I enjoyed my time with it. Starting with the components and the presentation, the artwork's okay. I thought it looked very old school, like too old school. I know that that's kind of what they were going for, a kind of retro look, but I really kind of expect the games that I play nowadays to, even if they're going for a retro look, to at least look modern. Does that sound weird? I guess I just want it to look very professional, and I didn't necessarily get that feel from the artwork and the graphic design in this game. But everything was easy to understand. I mean, the rulebook was easy to understand as well. And as far as game length and complexity, it's definitely a lighter game, and it's not too long. I think it's a reasonable amount of length for the content that is involved, so I can't really complain about that. Moving on to the gameplay, like I said, this is a simple set collection game with a couple of twists. Now you can you'll get cards in front of you, and you automatically have that card barring anything else happening. The thing that can happen is someone making you an offer on your card, doing the exchange by bidding money to you. Now you can prevent them from doing that, but that essentially takes you out of the running to get someone else's card, so you only do that when you really, really need that card. And I do appreciate that dynamic. It's like, okay, I have a limited amount of money, but I really want this card, but they're gonna have to give me a card and money as well, possibly a lot of money if it gets around to someone else making you an offer on it and you've already got money on the card because you locked it down before. Now you can't refuse that offer, but you might make a ton of money by doing that. So it is interesting that even though you can consider this to be a take that element in a way where you can be put in a position where you can't stop someone from taking your card, nevertheless, you're going to get something, so it's not terrible, and your plans can change on the fly. Like, okay, I've gotten how many purple cards taken from me? This is clearly not working, but I have these instead, and now I have the, I'm blanking on the proper name for them, but the event cards, maybe that is the proper name, which would give me sort of like achievement cards. They can give me more points based on what I have. Maybe I get points just for having a set of complete cards instead, or maybe money is all I really care about for this point because I'm gonna get a ton of points for having done that. And I do appreciate that you have those different options, and I like the whole idea of the achievement cards in general. Now, of course, and this is a recurring problem with any game that has these types of random cards that just have either random effects or random achievements, sometimes you're going to get a card that is just freaking useless to you. And it can be expensive in a way to get more of those cards because the primary way is you're giving up your ability to exchange, which you might want to do anyways, but you also need money. So when do you make that decision to get a card instead? I do enjoy having to make that decision, but it's tough when you get stuck with garbage in your hand, achievements that are not really feasible for you, and then having to get try and get rid of them as best as you can. And some of the cards are take that cards, like, hey, that's not going to be worth any points for you. Maybe I would have appreciated that those weren't focused on as much as, say, other better types of achievement cards or other things that you can play on yourself to give yourself some abilities. But I'm biased against take that elements in card games anyways, so that's just me speaking. But I have a thing as well for set collection games, and this is a surprisingly solid one. I appreciate the double cards. I've seen that in other games as well, like CV, where you can, effectively it becomes the type of card that you need it to be if you have multiple options. And I like the scoring system of getting more and more cards of a particular type in order to get an escalating amount of points, an exponentially larger amount of points. But again, being able to diversify with those achievement cards. It is clunky with the exchange system where you might just end up getting screwed, or sometimes the exchanging never happens. People just get what they want, which means that that whole portion of the game is really not exciting. But if you can get over those little hiccups that I rattled off, I still think it's a decent game, and it's definitely a light enough one that you can play it with a lot of people. It's very accessible, and you might want to check it out for those reasons. This is Foreclosed from Mercury Games.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.